Good morning, everybody. Hey, welcome to Wednesday, October 9th. And before we get started, I want to remind you again about our after work and learn that's going to be tomorrow. We have to have a hard cutoff today at noon. So uh, get on the phone right now and call and register at 382-0037. That's tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock, for an after work and learn about three key things you need to understand about making sure that your income is there and to make sure that you don't run out of money in retirement. These three key points are things that you need to understand going into retirement. So if you're already retired or you're 5 years out from retirement, call us right now at 382-0037 and get registered for that event.
One oh 5.7 Light FM. And Sean Mendez there. We're at 22 before 9, 8:38 now. Let's check in and see what's going on in your money this morning on Wall Street. What comes up must go down, and what goes down must come back up again sometimes, and that's why so many investors are buying Dramamine in case lots this month. Downtown Sebring, we go to the offices of Statler Financial Services. Phillip Statler's standing by. So you got your Dramamine handy, Phillip?
Man, it has been up and down this week. At least yesterday was an up day. I mean, it was a down day, but we got an update coming up today, it looks like.
Sure. Looks like it. About midnight last night, evidently, and I'm writing up to this. I don't know for sure, but it makes sense time-wise. China said we're optimistic about trade talks beginning tomorrow, and we're open to a partial trade deal, which kind of makes me say, oh, goody, because the Trump administration is kind of saying they want it all or nothing, but it was enough to make the Dow average futures and the S&P kind of do a 180 and headed straight up through the time that we speak this morning.
Yeah, it does, and it continues to rise even now this morning. It keeps going up, and I find that kind of interesting because a couple of other things I've seen is I've seen some, what do you call declines in terms of like Netflix. They're reducing the price target by $100 a share on that. That's a pretty substantial decline.
Yeah, that was one of the tidbits I saw on my news ticker this morning, that the analysts are saying Netflix is really going to get its butt handed to it for a couple of quarters here, with things like Apple TV being given free to everybody that buys an iPhone, and Disney introducing their platform and everything. It's not that Netflix is doing anything wrong. It's just there's a whole boatload of other people in the swimming pool with them.
Well, that's right. Competition is just is coming from every direction at them, and they were pretty much first to market, which helps. But now you got everybody taking pot shots at them, and we'll have to see how well they can hold their own to that.
It's going to be interesting to see what goes on in terms of their market share. The future for them is almost certainly now going to have to be in original programming, and they haven't exactly been a slouch on that.
No, they haven't. They've had some pretty good performers there when it comes to their own productions. When we talk about economic news, we're at the beginning of earnings season, so there's not a lot there. We're kind of at the beginning of economic season too, so we're not getting much in the way of numbers there either, Dave. But yesterday you and I were talking about the GDP, when we could expect kind of that first blush of what that's going to look like. And so I did a little digging this morning, and it looks like that we will get that first number for GDP about October 30th. So at the end of the month, we should get some kind of number out of an advanced reading of the GDP.
Man, we got to say, with all the caveat with that, as always, we do 3 readings on it. So the first one always gets revised, but you can be pretty doggone certain right around Halloween it's going to definitely cause some excitement one way or the other.
Well, it will, and I'm thinking now, because I was looking to see what other things we might could expect, and you talked about purchasing. I also saw that there must be some Fed minutes being released later this afternoon, and that's going to be of some interest to most of the traders out there.
Absolutely. They would be about due. We're a couple of weeks after the last meeting and finding out how much dissent there really was with the interest rate decision last time. probably going to affect things a bit this afternoon. After the last couple of days worth of upsy-downsy, there's a good chance that an interest rate decrease looks a little bit stronger at this point. Other guidance issues that we heard about, American Airlines is giving us all warning that the 737 MAX grounding was going to result in $140 billion in write-offs. I think they're kind of firing a shot across the bow when they release in about a week. It's not going to be as pretty as everybody dreamed, wouldn't you suspect?
Well, I would expect that to be the case, given this whole Boeing deal has just been a disaster for the whole airline industry. And so, the longer they stay out of circulation, the more pressure it's putting on the airlines.
Absolutely. And American says they're going to keep them grounded for a few more months, too, just to make absolutely sure. So the disaster for Boeing isn't over by any measure.
No, definitely not. They've got to get those things back in the air and running properly, and get some pilots on there to test them to make sure that they agree that they fixed everything.
Absolutely. Talk about other company news items that come out, and I got a giggle out of this because of all the kerfuffle over the NBA with a comment that made up on Twitter from one of their players that was sympathetic to the Hong Kong protesters, and China took the NBA off of their state TV and all of that. Now China's honked off at Apple. It seems that the protesters in Hong Kong, evidently they've been using Apple Messenger a lot, and China's saying, geez, they're really atrocious, terrible human beings at Apple for giving the protesters in Hong Kong a method for communicating back and forth. That's kind of interesting because Apple really does so much business through China. It kind of surprised me that they were being that vociferous about Apple, but they're getting downright protective about the Hong Kong situation.
Well, I think so, because it's a disruptor for them. And so, it's just one of those political things more than anything. We'll have to see how that thing finally balances out. But obviously, China is taking a stand, an economic stand against those people who are bowing up against them when it comes to the protest.
Understood. It's also going to be a study in corporate PR. The NBA got really plastered by calling that NBA player's tweet inappropriate with respect to China, and almost apologizing until they got plastered so badly in the court of public opinion and kind of walked back their their lack of support for the player. How Apple handles this in the public domain is going to be kind of interesting to watch during kind of an important time for them, since their iPhone sales are being watched like a hawk.
Well, yeah, and it sounds to me like, what I'm seeing is that they're actually raising the price target on Apple based on their iPhone 11 sales. Continue to be a strong process there.
Absolutely.
So I think that's kind of interesting. And then we had the only company I have, Dave, is Levi Strauss came out, and they beat on earnings. Their and revenue was in good shape. They're probably one of the biggest blue jeans makers out there, but they're basically even this morning as we get ready to trade this morning.
And we should remind folks that's a newly publicly traded company too, so it's interesting to watch.
Well, that's true. That's true. They were a private company up until, has it been a year now, Dave?
It seems a little under that, but I know it was something that we were watching with some excitement when they did their IPO. I can't remember whether it was a full year ago or whether we were talking about it just 6-8 months back, but good to know they're meeting the street in their infancy as a publicly traded company.
Yeah. Hey, on a jobs front, though, I also saw that Dollar Tree / Family Dollar is looking to hire 25,000 workers.
And that's good news. 25,000 is enough to move the needle on the unemployment numbers.
Well, I think so. I didn't see whether that was getting ready for the holidays for a seasonal deal, but either way, it's going to be tough given our employment numbers to round up the people to do that.
Yeah, it's hard to find full-time employees these days with a low unemployment rate down the line. Odds are they're going to end up having to pay a little bit more than they're used to paying as well.
That's true. That's one thing about the tight job market. It does raise wages.
I've always said the minimum wage is best raised by the market, and then you develop a floor below that. And the market is definitely raising the minimum wage by a bit, isn't it?
It is because of the low unemployment rate that especially those entry level jobs have gone up in pricing.
Understood. Well, setting the table for this morning, it was a definite down day on Wall Street yesterday. The Dow was down by almost 314 points, NASDAQ down by 132.5, and the Standard & Poor's was down by 45.7. Everybody was down by close to 1.5%. Believe it or not, at 313 points down. The Dow was the lowest of the 3% losers, which is the best picture of what a crummy day it was. After the China statements about trade optimism, things kind of got a little bit better overnight. 45 minutes before we open, Phillip, how do we look this morning?
So everything's pretty much green right now, Dave, off of their highs earlier this morning, but we got the Dow up about 0.65%, $168. We got the Dow up the S&P 500 up 0.75 of a point, almost $22. And then we've got the NASDAQ up a little over 0.8, $63. We've got on the commodities side, we've got oil trading back up, not quite 1% to 53.09 a barrel. And we've got the gold and silver both going up. Gold's up 0.5%, silver's up 0.8%. So all those things are moving up this morning.
All righty. World markets overseas. Asia kind of followed suit in our crummy day from yesterday, and the Asian rim markets were all off by a bit at the close. Europe's mixed. Britain is starting to look well ahead and saying, oh, my God, Brexit's going to be a mess. They're off this morning, but off of some good German economic reports overnight. Their market trading up markedly this morning in Berlin this morning. Phillip, somebody needs some advice to stabilize one's retirement, find out how to make it fruitful to go into old age financially. How do I find you?
Hey, Dave, one of the things we've got an after work and learn tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock. We're going to talk about the 3 rules to remember heading into retirement to make sure you don't run out of money. That's a great opportunity to get some information. All they have to do is call 382-0037 to register for that. Now, we do have a deadline. We've got to get our numbers called in by 11 o'clock today. So you got till 11 o'clock to register for that. Please do. And then, give us a call and get a second opinion on your current portfolio at 382-0037. And then join us every weekend for the Statler Financial Radio Show, 6 a.m. and noon on Saturdays, 10 a.m. Sunday mornings on News Talk 7:30 a.m.
All right, those face-to-face sessions are always useful, Phillip. I tell people to get their phone call in and get a reservation in toot sweet, right?
Absolutely. I mean, these are just things that really give you some rules to understand what to look at so that you aren't facing, running out of money, which is a big deal today.
Absolutely. And we'll catch you tomorrow morning here with a look at what could affect money tomorrow, and maybe we'll have good news on the markets at the close today. What do you know?
Hey, we're starting out that way. We'll just have to look and see how it ends up. Have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Sounds good. It's 105.7 Light FM and Statler Financial Services. Phillip Statler.
Have you done your homework yet?